Outside the sacrament of marriage, any expression of sexuality leads to a degradation of the human person and reduces the body to the status of a pleasure provider. The true purpose of physical relationships is revealed when the two, man and woman, receive grace and blessing to deepen their love, unity, and mutual knowledge. Physical union supports and strengthens the communion of the two. The Old Testament uses the verb to know for physical relationships. For example, Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain. Thus, sexuality helps the two to discover each other, to draw closer, and to give themselves to one another. As the relationship becomes more spiritual and the love becomes more divine, sexuality naturally ceases to be a concern and may even disappear from the couple's life. The ascetic dimension of marital sexuality is little understood. The wedding service is not the moment when permission for sex is granted. As Saint John Chrysostom says, the ship of sexuality, so often stirred by the waves of this world, finds refuge in the blessed harbor of marriage. For because of sexual immorality, let each man have his own wife, and let each woman have her own husband. Not only the monk who has taken a vow of chastity, but also the married person must struggle with sexual impulses. From the perspective of the battle against bodily passions, it is believed that it is more difficult for those in the monastic order than for the married. The latter, even while observing the fasting periods, still have moments when they can relieve sexual tension. But things can also be seen from another perspective, by analogy with fasting from food. Sometimes it may be easier to keep a strict fast, eating nothing at all, than to taste a little but always stopping short of fullness. Married couples, by respecting the fasting periods and other times when they cannot have physical relations, engage in an ascetic practice that is no less challenging than that of those who do not experience the physical comforts of marriage at all. In any case, virginity is not only the work of monks and unmarried people. It is not synonymous with the absence of a sexual life. Virginity, as spiritual perfection and complete union with God, is a state to which even the married are called. For in the kingdom of heaven, people neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like the angels in heaven. Marriage, including sexuality, is a path toward the kingdom. Through divine grace, bodily desires are calmed, and the attraction between spouses becomes increasingly spiritualized. This passion is complete when divine tenderness finds its place in the couple's life. Tenderness is a word we must consider with great care for a specific reason. It retains its undiminished essence. God has miraculously preserved this word, like the 7 young men from Ephesus, to bear witness at the end of this age to the extent to which we have semantically disintegrated its counterparts, love and affection. When sexuality is not embraced as asceticism, it becomes tyrannical. There are couples, even married ones, who, having disordered physical relations, complain of boredom or routine. This can lead to unnatural unions, then to perversions, and to the need for lewd or other types of stimuli. Many seek other sexual partners to satisfy them, thus committing adultery, not to mention more radical and perverse forms of sexual stimulation, such as ménage à trois or swinging. The same phenomenon occurs as with addiction. To achieve the same pleasure, the dose or frequency must be increased, or something different and stronger must be taken. Such sexuality lowers a person far below the level of animals, and it will never bring anyone fulfillment in the true sense of the word. Similarly, the various yoga techniques for so-called sublimation of sexual energy can only be spiritually sterile, where the goal is not union with God, following the path He Himself has shown us. There can only be failure, dissatisfaction, and suffering. In certain patristic hierarchies, when discussing the purpose of physical relations in marriage, the birth of children ranks third, after the deepening of the union between spouses and the avoidance of fornication. However, throughout the history of the Church, pregnancy interruption or any method that unalives the one conceived in the mother's womb has never been accepted. The language of contraception is fundamentally one of division and the denial of the gift. The sterilized marital act cannot reflect the extreme kenosis of Trinitarian existence. Thus, contraception becomes an anti-sign, an anti-type that seems to say, I refuse to mirror the Trinity. The birth of children is the fruit of the love between spouses and a gift from God. By her nature, especially after giving birth, a woman tends to become less interested in physical relations with her husband, whose sexual desire usually persists as the years go by. This creates a tension between the two. Or there are situations where one of the spouses wishes to observe fasting, including abstaining from physical relations, while the other does not want to or is unable to do so. Here we have as guidance the advice of St. Paul the Apostle. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. And likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, except by mutual consent for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to fasting and prayer. Then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. The Church and the spiritual father do not interfere in anyone's marital bed. However, there are certain guidelines, like the ones mentioned above, which establish under what conditions two spouses, only by mutual consent, may abstain from physical relations. When tensions arise, each should pay attention to their own part of the work. One has to work on self-restraint, the other on self-giving. As with any spiritual work, the grace of God is needed here as well. In this way, sexuality does not become a source of conflict and division, but rather offers a field for spiritual struggle and another opportunity to bring God more fully into the marriage.